Okay, everyone, let's get started. I think we're all here. You're all here so timely. We're even before schedule. What I want to do before we begin is just introduce one another, since we're going to be spending perhaps up to the next hour together. It depends how much time we need. I think I've met all of you but Marcia, but I'm Pamela Begeman and I live in Austin, Texas. I am on staff with Contemplative Outreach in charge of all things digital, including the website, the mobile app, online courses, the Zoom Meditation Chapel. I'm on the steering committee of that, which is a separate community, but we've partnered with them in order to bring centering prayer groups online, and that started in 2018. And then I'm also part of a contemplative church community here in Austin, Texas, that practices centering prayer and the other contemplative practices taught by Father Thomas in Contemplative Outreach. And lately, my job is just training people to use Zoom so that everybody can pray together. And so I'm really happy that you are all willing to facilitate that process for others. Bob, would you go next, please, and unmute?
Sure. I'm Bob Mischke in Denver, and I work at the Contemplative Outreach Center here in Denver, and I serve on the advisory council. So a number of our things have moved to Zoom so that we don't have to meet physically, including the advisory council, and I'm involved in the 9-month contemplative living experience course, so we're doing that with Zoom. And then other things like the national facilitation team, we were already working on Zoom, but all of my 12-step groups are now on Zoom and Tole groups, so I've gotten some experience with it, but I consider myself a beginner. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Marcia, would you go next, please?
Well, I'm not nearly as impressive as you two, but I've been using the Meditation Chapel because the two groups I belong to in person here in Broomfield, Colorado, are now defunct because of the virus. But I'm a retired librarian, and I'm efficient, but I'm scared to death about things digital. And I was so scared that I practiced entering, and I went into your board meeting and they said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm a future helper. I'm just practicing." So they said, and then I tuned out. But I'm working with Robert. He encouraged me. He said, "Oh, I think you'd be an amazing host." I said, "Oh, you think that?" But so he's been working with me at the 11 o'clock session. And after this, maybe I'll be able to do more. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Are you speaking of Robert Lalore? That Robert? Yes. So Robert Lalore is one of the founding creators of the Meditation Chapel, along with Roger Sessions, and he speaks very highly of you, Marcia, and is very glad that you're willing to step forward. So thank you for consenting. Carol, please.
So I'm here in St. Paul, Minnesota, and I'm part of Minnesota Contemplative Outreach, the Twin City chapter, and we tried Zoom for our United in Prayer Day and had about 40 people joining us, so it was really fun or inspiring. And I've gone on the Meditation Chapel a couple of times, so one time nobody showed up to facilitate, and we were all sitting there. Finally, I said, "Is everybody here for centering prayer?" And they said, "Yes." I said, "Do you want me to lead it?" They said, "Would you?" So I just went ahead, and we just had a short session, just 20 minutes of centering prayer, and then we said goodbye to each other.
Well, good for you. And you are co-facilitating with Lori Erickson. Is that your plan moving forward, Carol?
That's right. I told her I'd back her up.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad. Thank you. And John, I think you and I met at the Minnesota retreat last fall. Is that right?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
I'm an interim Lutheran pastor, and I just learned how to use Zoom in the last week. And I've been using this quote from Ken Blanchard: unless you feel awkward doing something new, you're not doing something new. So I've been feeling very awkward for the last week, learning all kinds of online things to help my small congregation outside of St. Paul. Carol Quist just recently trained me as a presenter of centering prayer, and I've been practicing for about 5 years.
Okay, well, thank you, John. I just want to go over a couple of things. John, I noticed your internet may be a little bit slow because there's a delay in your audio. So one of the kind of basic things to make sure of is that you're as close to your router as possible, and or you're hardwired. You're literally on an Ethernet, because you need some bandwidth to be running Zoom. All of you, your audio is really good. Carol, I think you have a headset on, is that right? I can't quite see. Or you have earbuds?
I'm using my computer microphone though.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
have a microphone in here.
Okay, well, that works. You all sound really good, but so there's just kind of some basic infrastructure requirements that are important, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the most important thing on this platform is your being as a facilitator. And that comes out of your own practice and your own way of consenting and relaxing in the moment to be present with the participants. And you all know that because you all do that in some capacity. And when you are able to come relaxed and open and present, the participants feel that. So that is by far the most important thing. Everything else we're going to talk about today is about the becoming comfortable enough with the platform that it is invisible to the prayer experience, or as invisible as possible. And so the more that you are comfortable, the more that your participants can be comfortable. And like it or not, oftentimes as a prayer group facilitator, you will need to help your participants with the technology. And usually it's just very basic things. It's finding the mute button, and it's finding the stop video button. And so for most PCs, those buttons are in the lower left, which if you move your cursor, you can find those. But if some of your participants have iPads or phones, it'll be on the top bar. And because they'll be touching their screen, you'll see a lot of fingers like this coming up in front on the screen, because they have to actually get in there. Most of their menu options are going to be collapsed. And if they're using their phones, they're even more collapsed. But usually the mute and the stop video will be prominent enough for those people. So once you get them familiar with those, most people can just kind of relax and participate pretty easily. Right now, all of you are practicing very good Zoom etiquette by being muted unless you're speaking. And that is the convention on all of the prayer groups. If there's more than one mic open, it tends to decrease the volume of who's ever speaking, plus there's background noise and there can be feedback. So the convention is stay muted unless you're speaking. The other convention that has developed over time is that as the prayer time begins, many people will stop their video, which I'm going to do right now. So the minute they go into centering prayer, people feel more comfortable having the video off. Our eyes are closed. Some people don't, but that is something that you'll see people do, and then they will come back to the circle or the prayer group after the time of prayer. And we do encourage people to use video to be vulnerable enough to be seen, especially in these days and times when people do feel more vulnerable about everything, because it builds a sense of connection and intimacy to be seen. So for example, if you have someone who comes into your prayer group that's new, you can invite them. Oh, we can't see you, Marcia. Could you please, turn your video on if you're comfortable? And if they don't, they don't, but it's an invitation the facilitator can make. And then sometimes you need to help people find the video. I am going to share on the screen. I believe I sent all of you this online facilitation guide. So, and this has just been updated recently with some new host codes. So this has everything in here that I'm going to talk about today, and I'm not going to go through everything because you know most of it. So I'm just going to hit on the high points of this, and then you can always go back and reference this facilitator's guide if you need to. The other important thing as a prayer group facilitator is to have the gallery view so you can see all your participants. So right now I can see all 5 of us on the screen. And for a PC in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see speaker view or gallery view. And if you could just click on that, you can get an experience of how that changes the view of what you have. One person will get really big and the others will turn into thumbnails, which is also the same view if I share my screen like I just did for the facilitator's guide. You all turned into thumbnails on the side of my computer. And then when we stop sharing, it automatically goes back into the gallery view. The gallery view is important because you need to see people's faces. A lot of people will forget to unmute and they'll be sharing something deep from their heart and nobody's hearing them. So it helps to stop people as quickly as possible and tell them to unmute during their time of sharing. Which, by the way, if at any time you have a question, just please unmute or raise your hand and I'll stop and answer any questions you may have. The other thing that has become very common on the meditation chapel is to share screens. And it really helps to have a shared visual space, especially if you're going to do Lectio Divina, or for example, if you're going to do something instructional. So a lot of people are moving the Introduction to Centering Prayer workshop via Zoom. I'm working with the Welcoming Prayer team, and they're going to start doing 2 guided welcoming prayer sessions twice a week on the Meditation Chapel. And for example, they'll be sharing the method of the welcoming prayer on screen as a way to guide people through the practice. So I'll show you something that I put together for our church has a Sunday morning centering prayer and Lectio Divina service. And so after the time of centering prayer, I put this up on the screen. We had 80-some people who joined that service. And I read the passage 3 times, and everybody could follow along visually, or they could look at the image, or they could just simply close their eyes and listen. But it seems to be helpful in this environment to share what you're reading. So part of what we'll be doing today is practicing that share function. Another really cool thing about the Meditation Chapel is you can share videos. And that's also in the guide. And I'm going to share a video. So this is from the Contemplative Outreach YouTube site. I'm just going to back up a minute so you can see this is the home page of the Contemplative Outreach YouTube site, and there are hundreds and hundreds of short videos available on this site that you can use and share with a prayer group, including down here at the bottom, there are playlists that have, for example, all of the spiritual journey series, the 6 continuing sessions, and so they have many different playlists where you can see a series in its total. For right now, though, I'm just going to choose a short video. And hold on one second. I forgot to do something. There's 2 little boxes, though, which is what I forgot to do, that you have to check. And if you open your share screen right now, just click on the button, and you should have a little pop-up come up. And on the very bottom of that pop-up screen, you'll see 2 boxes to check: share computer sound and optimize for full screen video clip. Those 2 boxes need to be checked so that you can share the video and the sound. So let me just do that.
Can you talk a little bit about deification? Because again, another source of misunderstanding. I think people are, coming from especially the fundamentalist Christian tradition, think that any identification with
So it's a pretty cool feature to be able to share short videos as a form of spiritual enrichment. So what I want to do right now is practice sharing. And it would be helpful if you have a document that you can open, any document, it doesn't matter what it is, and just open it. And in doing so, you'll be able to, when you click the share button, you'll be able to access that document. And it's just part of being a facilitator to have these things prepared. So if you know what you're going to read, or you know a video, it needs to be all kind of queued up and ready to access. So just raise your hand when you have a document open. Okay, Bob, let's start with you. If you would click the share button and then click the document and then click that blue share button.
Okay, so I'm sharing your
Yes.
online prayer group facilitators guide.
Yes.
And I learned that if I want to share it, I have to open it fully ahead of time for it to be a separate thing. Otherwise, I have to go to my desktop and find it.
Exactly. Exactly. And I need to get you an updated version of that guide.
Oh, okay.
So John, do you have a document to share? Okay. So does that seem, and then to stop share, you hit the red button on top. Excellent. So you had it up, you found it, and you stopped. That's good. All right, Carol. Oops, there goes Marcia. Hopefully she'll come back. Excellent. Very good. And that's really nice and readable too. So it does help. Now if you want to stop share. Good. So that's the easy part, and it just requires being prepared up front. Now if you would all click on share again and just bring up that whiteboard and then take a look at where you see the share. Can you stop sharing, Bob?
Sorry, I thought you asked us to click on share.
No, just click on share before you actually share the second time.
Got to. Sorry.
So you see, that's okay. So you see the whiteboard, but what I want you to be able to see is those two boxes on the bottom, the share computer sound and the optimized for full screen. So you can see where they are once you click that button. So that's all, that's just the step you have to remember to do if you're going to use video. Really, that's all there is to it. Marcia, you did it. Let's see. Okay.
I on my document.
Marcia, your audio is really cutting out. There, now you're back. So this is your desktop, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you saw that as an option. Do you want to stop sharing? There's a red stop sharing button at the top.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
Okay, well, that's good. So now you have a general idea of how to share, and you just need to have a Word document open, and that'll be one of the options you see when that little pop-up window comes up. And you and I can work on that separately so we can practice that.
All right. And I did have a question about where did you, when you went to the video selection, where did you find that?
You go to YouTube, so you open a browser and you go to YouTube. And if you type in contemplative outreach, there is a whole, it's called we have our own YouTube channel, and it has hundreds of videos.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a great resource. So the document that I sent has screenshots and a lot of the assists that you'll need to actually see the screens. It has recommendations for sharing, which you all know of because you've facilitated prayer groups. It has some of the best practices that facilitators who have been on the Meditation Chapel for over a year wrote down, and we collected all of those, so you can read those on your own. All of you have really good audio and video, and so I wouldn't worry so much about headsets. It's really dependent on the room that you're in. So for example, I have a concrete floor in my office, and so wearing a headset makes the audio sound better for participants, so it's not like I'm talking in a cave or something. The only other thing I will talk about is what you use to time your prayer. So if you use a physical gong, those can be very, very loud on this platform. So you just have to be careful not to have it too close to your microphone. I'm going to play for you. I use the Centering Prayer app, and I'm going to play. I have my volume completely up, as high as it will go. So was that okay? Not too loud, but you could hear it? Typically, if you do use a phone, like you noticed I brought it, here's my microphone, and I brought it right up to my microphone, because if I had it down on my desk, you wouldn't hear it. So I have to bring it right there, or if I have my laptop open, I have to put it right up to my laptop speaker so that it's heard okay. You'll know if nobody hears your bell, if nobody moves for a long time, and that's happened to me a lot. So when I see that on the screen, I'll just say amen. And then that, so if all else fails, there's other ways to end the time of prayer. So do just be cognizant whether you're using a phone or whether you're using a real bell about the volume. And then make sure to mute yourself after you've started the prayer so that you're silent during the time of prayer. Okay, I'm going to stop. Are there any other questions of any kind that you'd like to ask?
Should I stay after for special help?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That would
And
be
do you want to
great.
listen to this and see if it's too loud?
Yeah, why don't we listen to this together? And I'll mute. Yeah, that it's soft enough and it's not it doesn't kind of blow me out of my chair. Okay.
Let me try my gong and see how it sounds.
Okay. Very nice. Does anybody else want to try a sound? You're okay, John? Carol, do you want to try?
I always try to unmute myself on my picture instead of down below. It's kind of silly. I do want to try the Centering Prayer app because I just want to see where, I'm not sure where my speaker is on my computer. I think it's up at the top, but I'll just get there.
That was really soft. Put the other end. This is the end where the sound comes out. So put the other end and try it again. That's better. You might want to turn off your video because it's a little odd seeing this so close up in the.
Good idea. Okay, that's a good idea. Thank you.
There are a lot of other features for Zoom if you're considering doing some sort of training or if you're going to be working with large groups, but I won't go through those now. If you have other questions about those features for special circumstances, like John, if you're doing something for your congregation, I'd be happy to have a separate call with you because a lot of churches and congregations are using different features. Like, for example, we use the webinar feature at our church for our Sunday services now. And there's certain advantages to using that versus just this kind of meeting room. Okay, anything else?
Actually, that's kind of a question that I had because I think we're thinking about getting a Zoom channel, and I think one of the ideas was to, on a specific weeknight, to go through the Spiritual Journey series, one 20-minute or 25-minute segment at a time, and then have discussion afterwards through Zoom. Would that be a different format than this kind of format?
I think this format works really well for that, especially if you're going to have sharing, because in this format you can see everybody, and that's really important. In fact, I was telling a group this morning that I think that the sharing component of these prayer chapels are more important than ever as people are more concerned about things, and they need to be heard and they need to hear others. And they need to really feel that sense of community. So that format, I think, Carol, would work really well for this regular Zoom account.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question. What upper limit would you say for a size of a meeting versus a webinar or some other larger group?
That's a really good question, John, and it's one that I'm experimenting with in different venues. So, for example, I held a training a week ago, and we ended up having 92 people in this format. And I had to learn really fast how to be on my feet to sort of facilitate that. And it worked. I mean, I've been using Zoom enough where I was comfortable. In some classes that we have at our church, we have a group every Thursday night that's now as big as 150 or 160. And at first we used the webinar feature for that where nobody could see each other. But because of what I just mentioned about this seeing each other and community interaction. Starting this Thursday, we're going to move back to this kind of format. And as a host, though, with that many people, I can mute everybody. And I can stop people's videos. And if you'll click on Manage Participants down at the bottom, and you'll see a little side panel come up, and you should see a thing called Raise My Hand. And if you click on that, you'll see a little blue hand come up by your names. Okay, and then as a host, like for example, in Bob and Carol's picture and John's, I see little blue hands on their pictures as well as on the side panel. So John, for this Thursday, as I'm facilitating that large group, I'm going to have people use that digital hand raise so that they can get in a queue essentially and be called on. And that's the way I'll manage the community sharing. So it kind of depends what you're needing to do. The webinar has certain advantages, and then the meeting, this kind of meeting has certain advantages. A regular paid Zoom account, though, at the $14.99 a month is a limit of 100 people, though. So if you think you're going to go over 100 people, you need to, there's an add-on feature for additional participants, which is kind of pricey, actually. Okay, I'm going to lower Bob's hand. So that's the other thing. As a host, I can raise and lower. But go ahead, Bob.
I was going to, I put that on there so I could ask you a question. You said that you can have people raise their hands and then it would be in a queue. Now, are they numbered? How do you know who's, or do you know which one? You said they're in a queue, so but you don't know which order. You just choose people?
Well, in the webinar, it does put them in an order according
Okay.
to how they raise the hand, and then you can, which doesn't mean you have to call on people in that order, but
Okay.
and then after they're done, you can lower their hands so you can keep track of the queue. For this experiment on Thursday night, I'm just going to be working that side panel as the facilitator, and some of my co-hosts are going to be calling on people as they see it, and I'll just be kind of working the queue with my co-hosts in whatever order the Spirit moves them to call on people. So I'm not sure if in the regular meeting, if there's an actual queue that's ordered anyway, or if it's just how people appear on the participant panel.
Okay, thank you. I've not used webinar yet, so that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Pamela, what is the invite icon for?
I don't know. I never used that one. It looks like it's how you invite people to a Zoom meeting. Oops, you muted yourself, Marcia.
When you were talking about the blue hand, should I have clicked on where it says participants number 5?
Yep, click on that, and then a side panel will open up. And at the bottom of that side panel, you should see raise hand.
I do. Okay.
Okay, why don't you try that? See, now I can see in that panel that you've raised your hand, and I'm going to lower it now. That does bring up one point that I want to make. In the updated Facilitators Guide, for those of you that will be on the Meditation Chapel, you will find host codes. And those host codes, like for example, when I logged in today, I don't own this account, but I claimed host by using a host code. So if you click on participants again, you may not have this option, but if no one was the host, at the bottom, there would be a little button that would say claim host. So Carol, for example, when you go to the Meditation Chapel, you could claim host before everybody arrived. And what that allows you to do is to mute participants or unmute them if they're having trouble. Like let's say, for example, you're 10 minutes into the time of centering prayer and somebody joins late and they're rustling around. You could mute them during the prayer time. You can also stop people's video, and you can also remove people. Now, in the almost 3 years that the Meditation Chapel has been on, there's only been one instance in 3 years where a person has been removed. But you do have that capability if there's something inappropriate. So those host codes are in the Facilitator's Guide. Anything else?
I have another question.
Yes.
I'm sorry, you people probably know all this stuff already, but I notice sometimes Robert will get us started and then he will disappear and there'll be a background picture of the statue of Mary. How does he do that?
He does it just like I did this to mine. So when I stopped my video, I uploaded a picture to my profile on Zoom. And there Bob did, he has a picture of himself there. So all you need to do, Marcia, is you can log into your Zoom account on the web and you can upload a profile picture. And then that way, when you stop your video, you have a custom picture. And that's what you're seeing Robert do. And then Robert also does a fancy thing. You can use a virtual background. So if you don't want people to see your background, you can do really fun stuff that makes you look like you're at the Taj Mahal.
So where do I upload the photos from?
You can choose it from your computer. So if you have some photos that you've taken that you really like, or if you have a photo of yourself that someone's taken and it's on your computer, when you go to load that, it'll ask you to choose an image and then you can choose anything from your files.
So I go to where my photographs are before?
Yes. No.
Before it?
No. It'll just take you there as part of the upload.
Okay. Not sure I understand that, but I was thinking of all I have to do is blank my image and it will be black. I just thought that kind of looked ugly and I thought maybe a flower bouquet would be nicer.
Yeah, everybody likes to have something beautiful. One of the things I didn't cover, and it's important, is if you hover your cursor over your own image, you'll see 3 little dots. And you have the ability to rename yourself, for example. Like Marcia, you could put your whole name, or I've noticed some people in Minnesota, Carol, are putting their city and state so that people can just quickly see where they're from. So it is good to have, and I'll do that now. So I just added this, if you can see. I just renamed myself and added my location. So that's a nice feature, especially as we are sitting with people from all over the place. And you can also help people do that. Like a lot of people will come in, it'll just say iPad. And you can help them rename themselves so that they can be seen. Okay. You are all ready. And Marcia, you and I will work on some of these other things. So Carol and John and Bob, thank you for being here. And if you do have any other questions, let me know. I'm happy to help. So bless you all.
Thank you, Pamela. Blessings.
Thank you for being here, Bob.
Thank
Carol,
you, Pamela.
take care.
Thanks, Pamela.
Bye.